Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
Whether it's a movie night or just midday, Skinny Pop is a salty snack that keeps on giving. Made with just 3 simple ingredients for an irresistibly delicious taste and a large serving size that lasts. Deliciously popped, perfectly salted. Skinny Pop, popular for a reason. Shop Skinny Pop now.
Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
I can't stop scratching my downtown. Yeah, but I'm not itching to go downtown and tell a receptionist I'm here to talk about my downtown. Some things you'd rather type than say out loud.
There's no question too embarrassing for Amazon Health AI. Chat your symptoms and get virtual care 24/7. Healthcare just got less painful.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. The MLB at Field of Dreams returns. Bryce Harper and the Philadelphia Phillies face Byron Buxton and the Minnesota Twins at the iconic Field of Dreams ballpark. The field is calling. Watch the MLB at Field of Dreams game live on Netflix Thursday, August 13th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific.
Look, Gavin, all I'm saying is that the IRA was respectable. I mean, the people trying to kill our politicians were Squeaky Fromme and John Hinckley Jr. Ass.
The following podcast contains...
You cannot say filth, flying filth in front of people.
explicit language.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that asks a simple question. When you married the guy, just so you could stake your claim on his corpse? What the hell were you thinking? I'm your host, Dave Bledsoe, and this is episode number 530, the Charles Isn't in Charge Anymore edition of the show. We talk about what happened to Charlie and the family after the trials were over. So stay tuned. The What the Hell You Thinking podcast is brought to you by Regrets Laser Tattoo Removal. Like the old song says, regrets? You've got a few, and if you've got some you'd rather not mention, why not get them removed? Call Regrets Laser Tattoo Removal and wipe the slate clean. Is our procedure painless? No. Is it inexpensive? Definitely not. Is it better than the cat whiskers you had inked on your face on a 4-day bender in Tijuana? You bet your ass they are. Not every tattoo bad decision has permanent consequences when you use Regrets Laser Tattoo Removal.
September 5th, 1975. President Ford is in Sacramento, California's state capital.
As I walked to the Capitol, I had people on both sides of the sidewalk wanting to shake hands.
Among those on the sidewalk is 26-year-old Lynette Fromme. Her better-known but mispronounced name, Squeaky Fromme.
I had been concerned about a report that I heard about the tallest trees in the world, the coast redwoods, and those trees were in danger of falling. I didn't want to lose any of that. I felt responsible.
In 1975, Fromme meets with a government official in San Francisco, pleading that the redwoods be saved. She is unsuccessful and returns home to Sacramento.
Well, just when I got home from that trip is when I saw on the news that Ford was coming into town. My original thought was, I'll go and talk to him. And then I realized that you don't get attention for that. You get attention if they're scared.
I have no extraneous holes.
It's an odd thing to say.
What I mean is I'm not pierced or poked for the purposes of decorative body adornment. I've got nothing against doing so. I find well-done tattoos and piercings both fascinating and, in some cases, incredibly sensual.
Did not need to know that.
I just don't personally wish to be bedazzled. I used to tell people I had a needle thing, which was only partially true. Facts are, needles never really bothered me, but pain did. And there are 3 kinds of pain. Involuntary incidental pain, or IIP. Step on a Lego, that's an IIP. Necessary incidental pain, or NIP. Have a painful medical procedure, that's an NIP. Finally, voluntarily inflicted pain, or VIP. Having someone ram an ink-laden needle into your flesh thousands of times for the purposes of embellishment, well, you've got a VIP. Now, I always figured that in a world with the other two types of pain, that third type of pain wasn't for me. Additionally, I've never really been found anything of such significance that I wouldn't have it permanently displayed on my person. Serving in the military, it was common that young people would get informative and illustrative information such as
kill them all, let God sort them out,
etched on their skin, which is a strange thing for someone whose military service consisted entirely of them filing payroll. But hey, your body, your choice. Others had their military specialty memorialized. Amongst us military working dog handlers, this was a popular motif, a smart, snarling canine face with talk shit, get bit carved into your person beneath. And I enjoyed the job, but the scars from the actual dog bites were more than sufficient to remind me of my youthful occupation. And finally, there were, of course, humorous applications of permanent ink, such as my buddy Fred, who had a naked man leaning forward with his genitals dangling on his belly, and Fred's navel forming this naked man's hairy asshole. I wonder how Fred feels about this choice today when he sees his primary care provider.
That's really beautiful, Fred.
I briefly dated a girl who had her dad's name as her tramp stamp.
What is she, a stripper?
Yeah, of course she was. I should say that her dad's name was Christian, and she was also very devout as a Christian. I mean, her faith didn't stop her from stripping and sucking off guys like me, but because, again, we are all entitled to do whatever we please with our bodies, and I support the choices you make for yourself. I just sometimes question the wisdom of them. Like when you carve a Nazi swastika between your eyes to impress a parole board. Which brings us to this week's topic, and also I have to pause here and remind you that Charles Manson was not sentenced to life in prison. The sentence for his crimes was death, along with his co-defendants. And the only reason he lived a long and bizarre life in prison is because of this week's tangent.
And now, as promised, the tangent.
America has never been a gentle nation when it comes to our criminals and other undesirables, which is, of course, a code word for minorities. When the colonies were founded, we brought the brutality Bible with us from the old world. The first recorded execution in America was in Jamestown Colony in 1608. Captain George Kendall was executed by firing squad for either mutiny or spying for Spain.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Very few do. The American Civil Liberties Union estimates that 15,269 Americans have died via state-sponsored executions since the first firing squad in 1608. The number of unofficial executions is unknowable, but you can rest assured it's rather larger. So after centuries of shooting, hanging, and beheading, I mean, technically all the beheadings were from botched hangings because someone tied the rope wrong.
Daddy, the top came off.
No shit.
There began to build a feeling that the state murdering people wasn't the kind of thing that, America ought to be doing. That it might be wrong. This was naturally controversial. A fair percentage of America not only thought executions were a good thing, they thought that we ought to be doing more of them, whilst the remainder of us didn't think about them at all. But a few Americans began to marshal legal arguments that the death penalty violated the Constitution's 8th Amendment, which, among other things, says that punishments for crimes should not be cruel or unusual.
Well, that is a little vague.
Yeah, the framers were big fans of nebulosity. And it was in that vagueness that civil rights lawyers went to work, eventually bringing a Georgia case to the Supreme Court called Furman versus the United States in 1972. Wikipedia sums up the details, quote, William Henry Furman, Luscious Jackson, and Elmer Branch were 3 petitioners sentenced to death for aggravated felonies. Furman was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. Jackson and Branch were convicted of rape. The victims were white, and in Branch's case, 65 years old, unquote. Now, the court ruled in favor of Furman 5-4 that the death penalty violated the 8th Amendment, but not one of the 5 concurring justices on that ruling could agree exactly how it did so. The main gist was the scattershot application of the death penalty. Different states, even different jurisdictions within the same state, applying different standards as to who merited the death penalty.
A lot. Black guys mostly.
Indeed, the death penalty seemed to fall heaviest on black people, but defenders claimed that was only because most of the people being tried were black.
Not helping.
The upshot was that anyone in the United States sentenced to death in all courts had their sentences commuted to life in prison. This lasted for 4 years as state and federal legislatures began writing laws to make sure we could get back to the American pastime of state-sanctioned murder. In 1976, an equitable system for deciding how to kill people based on 10 conditions ranging from who the defendant killed, what other crimes they committed, what they're previously convicted of, their risk to the public, and of course, the depraved nature of the crime, and how black the defendant was.
Did you make that last part up?
Did I make that up? Black people make up 14% of the general population, 40% of death row. Did I make that up? I think that question's answered. Ask and answer. None of this was why Manson wasn't executed, because a California case, the People v. Anderson in the California Supreme Court, ruled that the death penalty was cruel and unusual weeks before SCOTUS did, which is why Charlie and Sirhan, the cat who shot Robert Kennedy, weren't gassed. But those two not being gassed are also why California amended the Constitution to allow the death penalty, which went into effect as soon as the SCOTUS case said it was cool to start killing people again. Since his death penalty was overturned under California state law, Charles Manson would become eligible for parole after a certain percentage of his time had been served. The first time he became eligible was in 1978. During the hearing, he told the board, as was noted on serialkillercalendar.com, quote, "I'm mad. I'm indignant. I'm mad to every bone in my body that I've come back to the penitentiary when I didn't break no law. My plan will be go to the wilderness and live off the land. I go to the desert and talk to the animals. I couldn't make it by running watches and making car payments. My ways are simple," unquote. In 1981, he told the parole board, quote, "I'm not ready for parole. I could have saved you all this time, and that my heroes are the Shah of Iran, the Iranian religious leader, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, Benito Mussolini, and Adolf Hitler," unquote. And in 1986, he appeared, now bearing a swastika on his forehead, and told the parole board, quote, "All of the judgments and all the blame that is pushed on me will be reflected back in the fires of holy war that call crime. I did invoke violence for life on earth. From behind the time locks of the courtrooms and from the wells of darkness, I did let loose devils and demons with the powers of scorpions to torment. I did unseal the 7 seals and 7 jars in accord with the judgments placed upon me. You've drugged me for years, dragging me up and down prison hallways, laying my head on every chopping block. You got me chained, burnt me, but you cannot defeat me. Yeah, and all that was said about me, it was not me saying it. And if you see a false prophet, it's only a reflection of your own judgments," unquote. In 1997, he was again up for parole despite violating prison regulations 13 times since his last parole hearing, including threatening staff members, attacking guards, creating stabbing incidents, doing drugs, etc. And he told the board, quote, "I accept this decision. That's cool. What I'd like for you to do in your own minds personally, everybody that has a personal mind of their own could possibly consider that the longer you let his conviction stand, this little helter-skelter scheme of the district attorney to give his particular reality over into the play that's going to be the reality that they're perpetuating. That's not the reality I'm perpetuating. I'm not saying that I wasn't involved. I'm saying that I did not break man's law. I didn't break God's law. Consider that in the judgment you have for yourself. Good day and thank you," unquote. 1997 was the last year Charlie would actively speak to the parole board. From then on, he had to watch with his lawyer if those parole hearings weren't canceled due to his many disciplinary infractions, which they mostly were. And when he died in 2017, he had been denied parole a total of 12 times. Charlie knew that he was never going to get out, and honestly, he didn't particularly want to. That doesn't mean Charlie didn't lead an active social life, enjoying visitors from outside the wall. Charlie gave as many as 20 interviews to reporters, print, and television. In tapes released after his death, he hinted that he killed more people than we knew about, but he was almost certainly lying. Charlie knew what his role was, and he did not disappoint. He sat down with Sacramento's KCRA television station to do an interview in prison back in 1980, and here is just a smattering of some of Charlie's wisdom in 1980.
I know. When you know, you just simply know. Jesus on that cross. You know he's there. Is he there? Is the cross there? I know the cross is there. You don't have to put me on the cross
the witness for the cross. I can see the cross.
I've got a curiosity. Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Remember you had an X years ago and you changed it now to a swastika?
No, I never changed. It's been the same thing all the way along.
Wasn't it always an X?
No, it never was.
What's it stand for?
It stands for whatever I mean it to stand for, and whatever I make it stand for, and whatever I want it to stand for.
But you didn't one time say you were Xing yourself out?
No, that was your newspapers that gave you that.
What does it stand for you?
It stands for many things. It would take 2 or 3 weeks to explain all the things that I've built. The Charlie Manson that you created, that's not me. That's only an illusion in your minds. It hasn't got anything to do with me.
What's the real Charlie Manson?
I haven't really been able to make him up. See, I've just been reborn again. See, and I'm learning now.
And this was the calm Charlie, the reasonable Charlie, the sane Charlie, the Charlie who thought that maybe he could still get out on parole. And as the years went by, the realization that he was never going to get out, he was going to die in prison. So Charlie's interviewers met a very different Manson from the Manson in 1980.
From your words, as Mr. Emmons quotes them in this book, it's clear that you were guilty of murder, and yet he says in all his conversations with you, he never heard you express remorse. Have you never felt it?
Remorse for what? You people have done everything in the world to me. Doesn't that give me equal right? I can do anything I want to you people at any time I want to, because that's what you've done to me. If you spit in my face and smack me in the mouth and throw me in solitary confinement for nothing, what do you think's going to happen when I get out of here?
And for decades, Manson was in and out of solitary for all kinds of shit until he got too old to really be any kind of problem for his jailers and began turning his thoughts to his legacy. And of course, looking for love. Because in 2014, Charlie found Mrs. Right and applied for a marriage license to Afton Elaine Starr Burton. True love found Charlie late in life. He was 79 years young when Starr came into his. Starr was only 16 when she discovered Charlie and started a pen pal relationship with him. The letters blossomed into passion, and Starr moved to Corcoran, California, the town where Manson's prison was located, and began in-person visits. You know, when Charlie wasn't in solitary. She would call him every day and visit on the weekends. She was quoted on CNN.com, quote, "I'm completely with him, and he's completely with me. It's what I was born for, you know. I don't know what else to say," unquote. And in 2014, the two filed for a marriage license and planned on a prison ceremony. Alas, the ceremony was not to be. Not long after the certificate was issued, Charlie went back into solitary for yet another disciplinary infraction, and this license expired before the wedding occurred. Charlie seemed to have cooled on wedded bliss with Starr, who had begun showing up to her meetings with him with her male friend. Also, Charlie was dumb but paranoid, began to think Starr might not love him, but for what she could get out of him, and namely that thing that she could get from him was his corpse. From the New York Post, quote, "Manson's fiancée, 27-year-old Afton Elaine Burton, known as Starr, sought to wed the convicted mastermind of the Shannon Tate murder and 8 other slayings so that she could gain possession of his corpse, according to journalist Daniel Simone. Burton and a pal, Craig Hammond, planned on laying out Charlie's remains in a glass crypt," Simone says. The pair figured that their bizarre California version of Lennon's tomb would draw huge crowds and make big money, unquote. The wedding never happened, and Charlie died alone in prison. His body was cremated and his ashes buried by relatives. Maybe. It's also possible that some of them are on display in a Michigan Museum of Horror in Monroe, Michigan. But that sort of thing is kind of hard to prove. You know, not all the family went to jail for the famous murders, not even close. They put in appearances at the trial, supporting Charlie, and often being thrown out for disrupting proceedings. So we got to ask, what happened to them after Charlie went away? I mean, most drifted off and faded into obscurity and pretended that they had nothing to do with the whole thing. Somebody brought up Charlie Manson, they'd be like, "Never heard of him." But a few of them kept the faith and the flame of the family alive. Lynette Squeaky Fromme became a sort of de facto family leader, now was at a loss without Charlie to guide her, so she roamed the country associated with criminals and lunatics, which, you know, she'd been doing before Charlie got locked up. This is because Squeaky was also both of those things as well. and she flitted back and forth around the Southwestern California. She was implicated in a murder, but was later cleared, and then spent much of her time trying to recruit converts to Manson-based religions. She retained the knack for showing up adjacent to famous people. For example, she tried her very best to meet with Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page, as Rolling Stone said in 1985, quote, "A girl with mousy brown hair knocked on Danny Goldberg's door," a Led Zeppelin record label vice president. A nervous tic marred her face, and she said she had to see Jimmy Page because she had foreseen something evil in his future and thought it might happen that night in the Long Beach arena. She swore that the last time this happened, she had seen someone shot to death before her very eyes. I mean, Squeaky had at least tangentially been involved in numerous murders, so it's possible she wasn't lying. The girl was frantic. She was persuaded to write Jimmy a long note and then left unwillingly. The note was burned, unread, unquote. It wasn't until a couple of weeks later that Goldberg recognized the crazy-eyed young woman as Manson's acolyte, Squeaky Fromme. But it wasn't because of her time with Manson, the Manson family, rather, it's because she was in the news for rather a different reason, because she'd taken up an interest in politics. Presidential politics, and by interest, I mean she had recently tried to assassinate a president.
Say, Gerald Ford.
Why did Squeaky want to kill Gerald Ford?
Damn, bitch is crazy.
Well, yes, but also she considered herself to be a protector of trees.
Yeah, she's crazy.
You're crazy?
You see, back in the 70s, we had air pollution that wasn't connected to climate change. I mean, it was contributing to climate change, but it wasn't because of climate change. There was a considerable concern that this pollution, which we call smog back then, was harming redwood trees, along with everything and everyone who breathed it. So Squeaky had taken it upon herself to become a defender of the trees, and she was in Northern California to allegedly speak with politicians on the issues. While there, she learned that President Gerald Ford would be speaking at the state capitol in Sacramento, and Squeaky decided that she would protect the trees by killing Jerry. How this worked, she said, as quoted on Wikipedia, was, quote, "To get life, not just my life, but clean air, healthy water, and respect for creatures and creations," unquote. So, she managed to borrow a Colt 1911 .45 caliber pistol from a friend, despite not actually knowing how to use it. And on the morning of September 5th, 1975, Squeaky dressed herself all in red for, quote, "the animals and earth colors," unquote, and strapped the pistol in a holster on her leg and headed to the Capitol to save the trees. And as the crowd milled around Ford, Squeaky drew the pistol, shoved it between the bodies in front of her, and pulled the trigger to a dull click.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
As Secret Service grabbed the pistol and tackled her to the ground, she exclaimed, quote, "It wouldn't go off. It didn't go off. Can you believe it? It didn't go off," unquote. You see, she had put the magazine in the gun, but did not know she had to pull the slide to chamber around. Though she later would claim this was intentional because, quote, "I was not determined to kill the guy," unquote. She was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison, escaped briefly, and was captured 2 days later. And, another woman tried to kill Gerald Ford 17 days later in San Francisco, but she wasn't part of the family. After that, Ford didn't visit California anymore, and who can blame the guy? Squeaky was paroled in 2009, married, lives in California, and in 2019, 2 years after Charlie died, she was interviewed by ABC News and said of Charlie, quote, "Was I in love with Charlie? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I am still in love. I still am. I don't think you can fall out of love," unquote. Many of the Manson family felt lost when Charlie went to jail. A few of them decided they were going to do something. They were going to bust Charlie out of prison.
Well, that really doesn't sound like a good idea.
Really, you think so? A bunch of drug-addled hippie dipshits trying to break their cult leader out of a maximum security prison? Oh, come on. Ye of little faith. Because Charles Levitt, Catherine Gypsy Scher, Mary Brunner, Lawrence Edward Bailey, along with Kenneth Como, who was on the run after breaking out of prison himself, and a guy named Dennis Rice, who would go on to become a born-again Christian minister, hatched themselves a little plan. They would find a gun store, steal a shitload of guns and ammunition, and then they would hijack a 747 and demand that Charlie be released to them, and they would take the 747 and fly God knows where. Their words. So, they robbed a beer distributor because you need money to steal guns, and also there was beer, and began casing Los Angeles gun stores for the right one to rob. Keep in mind, robbing a gun store is a pretty bad idea in general because they're armed there. They settled on a Western surplus supply store in the Hawthorne neighborhood of Los Angeles. Just as the store was closing, the five burst into the store with a sawed-off shotgun and ordered the staff to lie down on the ground.
Nobody move! This is a robbery.
So, the staff got on the ground, behind the counter, as the Manson family began stripping the racks of weapons and carrying them out to their van. The thing is, like most every store with valuables, the Western supply store had this little button behind the counter, and if you hit it, it triggered a silent alarm that brought the police real quick because the police have strong feelings about a bunch of guns being stolen. And as the Mansonites were busy looting the place, the alarm was pressed, and very, very, very soon, the police arrived.
It's the cops!
Having all those guns, the robbers chose violence. And that is when the shooting started. What ensued was a 70s action movie level of gunfire. From the Los Angeles Times, as recorded on CieloDrive.com, quote, "The suspect saw a two-man police car arrive in front of the store and started to flee in the van, but the way was blocked. Lieutenant James Cobus had just pulled across the alley with the driver's side of his patrol car facing the truck. He was standing by the door with his radio microphone in his hand when the gunfire came from the van. Cobus's car was struck 20 times by buckshot and automatic rifle slugs. The officer returned fire over the hood of his car. Backup units responded to Cobus's radio call, and 8 Hawthorne officers were involved in the gunfight when the sheriff's deputies and units from Redondo Beach and Manhattan Beach police departments and the California Highway Patrol arrived. Sometime during the shootout, police said the suspects ran from the van. At this time, police opened fire with shotguns, and 3 suspects were wounded, and the 6th member of the group escaped." Unquote. When the shooting was over, well over 100 rounds had been fired. The family's van had been hit by 50 shots alone. 3 members of the family were shot, none fatally. Several police cars were riddled with bullets, and 5 of the 6 robbers were in custody. The 6th who'd made a run for it was caught the next day. They went on trial for armed robbery despite making an insanity defense because apparently shooting out with like 30 cops for 10 minutes is crazy or something. They were all convicted and sentenced to lengthy jail terms. And all of this in spite of, or more likely because of, the usual Manson family shenanigans like jury tampering and death threats to jurors. Because when your case is a lock, why not compound the sentence with just a little light jury tampering? With so many of the family locked up for such a long time, the shootout was the last hurrah for the cult. The remainder of the Free family, again, just drifted into obscurity, and we've never really gotten over our obsession with them. ABC Australia tried to get a grip on why the Manson family is still such a force in our culture. Quote, "What's not clear is whether much meaning is there to be extracted. When Manson died, he took to the grave the secrets of his own particular kind of crazy, a mind ruled by chaos and insanity. Yet even now we struggle to look away. We look for some reasons in his madness. He had something like his magnetic quality," says Jack Hamilton, a pop critic at Slate, who teaches American media studies at the University of Virginia. "We're fascinated that someone seemingly evil could possess something like that." Karina Longworth from You Must Remember This takes another route. She says the Manson story is resonant because it's relatable. It's about a guy who moves to Hollywood to be a star. He's rejected by the LA cool kid scene. He grows bitter. Manson is the fulfilled revenge fantasy of millions of pilgrims who come to Hollywood looking to make their mark, only to be condescended to and lied to and turned away with nothing to show for their efforts. If Manson's life is a bloody myth of our desire for fame, it is also about our wish for saviors. Hadley Freeman, writer of The Guardian, links the 60s counterculture vulnerability to psychopaths like Manson with the current situation in the US and the UK. Manson's genius lay in exploiting the burgeoning feeling at the time that there needed to be a new way of doing things, that the old elites should be overthrown, that the mainstream media and police were in the pocket of the establishment, and that the new generation had been sold out by a system that was supposed to help them. When people seek saviors, they generally find false prophets. Unquote. Fucking Aussies, man, are on with this shit. Now, this podcaster thinks that it's a mix of all those things, with a healthy measure of good old-fashioned American exceptionalism with like a little cherry on top, because Charles Manson is a uniquely American figure. No other nation could produce a character exactly like him. The world has produced far more prolific criminals, and as a cult leader, Charlie is no Jim Jones or even an L. Ron Hubbard. But yet, 57 years after the crimes done in his name, the name Manson is still remembered, still venerated in pop culture, not because he was great at anything, not because he made the world a better place, definitely not, and not because he taught us something about ourselves. He's remembered because he understood that America loved a character they can point and blame for the ills in our society. Charlie screamed at the judge during his trial, "These children who come at you with knives, they're your children. I didn't teach them, you did." And he was right. Charlie didn't create these lost shitheads. He capitalized on them, but he didn't make them. But he got blamed for them because that is what America needed at the time, and to some extent still does. It's easier to point a finger at something or someone else than it is to point that finger back at ourselves and take responsibilities for the monsters we make, be they a tiny little lunatic in a band full of drugged up hippies, or a megalomaniacal wannabe dictator and the Nazi followers that he has, and the celebrity industrial complex that allowed him to be created in the first place. We built it, we broke it, and we've bought it. And if this is over, I promise you, the fingers of blame will be pointed anywhere, everywhere. The media, the political system, capitalism, except at the people who are truly responsible. Us. They didn't make Charlie Manson. Or, the guy we have now. We made him. We did this. This shit is on us.
Wow! A Lego set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks. Watch out! And clicks. For kids who love adventure, choose a Lego set. A gift that always clicks.
This episode is brought to you by Orgain. Orgain Creatine Monohydrate helps improve muscle size, strength, and power when combined with a regular exercise and weight training routine. It supports brain health, and it's certified with informed choice, so you can compete with confidence. Studies show that creatine may support brain health in vegetarians and aging individuals. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
That is it for the show this week, and finally, thank God for the Mansons. 4 parts, 10 weeks, counting the 4th of July special. I wanted to cover the Mansons so thoroughly because he really is a dark mirror to the bullshit boomer fantasy of the 1960s. And also, as horrible as well as it all was, it's also kind of fun. Speaking of fun, rate and review the show so others can find us and wonder what kind of sick fun you were having with them. Kick us $1 at patreon.com/whatthehellpodcast. You see, we use all that money for tattoo removal because I forced Gavin to get my face tattooed on his ass, and now he wants to have it off. Do all the things Jeremy tells you to do in the closing credits. Otherwise, he won't go ahead with my proposed show theme for temporary tattoos with my face on people's asses. And so for me, Dave, there's a new boy on the cell block now. Bledsoe, producer.
He is missed by the family. I can't believe you made me do this. This is so stupid.
Gavin, and all the fictional parole board members on this show, we want to know that Charles was more in charge of the wrongs than he was of the rights. And if you don't think that I have not planned to use this song since the very first episode, but have been saving it till the end, you just don't understand me at all, do you? And we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Charles in charge of our days and our nights. Charles in charge of our wrongs and our rights. And I want Charles in charge of me.
What the Hell Were You Thinking stars Dave Bledsoe and features Gavin St. James and several fictional minions. The show is produced by Kimberly Steele and a part of the Seltzer Kings podcast network. You can find more information on the show on their website, whatthehellpodcast.com, or on Facebook as What the Hell Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I have no ending for this, so I take a small bow.
Woodstock, baby!
Seltzer Kings
podcasts.